Welcome back to another episode of Spiritual Teachers Podcast. With me today is Jose Alejandro. He's a master certified life and leadership coach, an embodiment guide, and a wilderness rites of passage guide. It's such an honor to have you on today, brother. Welcome on.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. Thank you. I'm really honored to be here and excited to dive in with you, man.
Thank you, man. I'm excited too, bro. So, some of the topics we're potentially going to cover is the power of men's work, conscious heart-led business, and initiations and rites of passage.
Uh-huh.
So, kind of how we start the podcast off traditionally is if you could share your awakening journey, how everything kind of started for you, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, yeah. Beautiful, man. I'm excited to share and I'll give the high level. I think best place to start is really, right now I'm in Puerto Rico. I was born and raised here, and I moved to Jersey, New Jersey for about 20 years. And what moved me to Jersey was my parents' first divorce. And I say
Mm,
first because it was about three. The last one was 4 months after I moved out of my house. And that was maybe at the age of 25. And the reason I share that is because it's really a reflection of my journey of trying to fit in, of figuring out where I belong, of getting my bachelor's in psychology to try to fix my parents and understand their mind and really be the savior and the parentified child of the family.
hmm
So that's kind of living in Puerto Rico. I was a very adventurous kid, asked a lot of questions, was very curious, always um, wondering how some things worked and why decisions were made. And I think my father had more patience when it came to those questions, but he was also caught up in his own world. So I don't know if it was patience or just like kind of unbothered. And my mom was a little bit more anxious. So I think I got that duality of anxiety and I think repression and depression from both of my parents.
hmm
And it got a little bit chaotic around the age of 4 or 5. My parents started to get into a lot of fights, and as a kid, I just remember wanting to spend as much time with my grandparents as possible to get the fuck away from it.
Yeah.
And that led to them separating. My mom took me to the States, and I started coming to Puerto Rico over the summers, and already within a couple years, kind of feeling the, you know, the the messages of like you're no longer from here energy, right?
Okay.
My parents got back together, and then that was so we lived in PA. Then they got back together, and from the age of like 8 to like 15, 16, I was coming to Puerto Rico every summer and spending time with my grandparents, and that was like. I was bored out of my mind for the most part, being at my grandparents' house. But the reason I did it was because so much chaos in my household between my
hmm
parents whenever they were together.
Yeah.
And, just honoring them because they did the best they could. And obviously, I've done a lot of work with them individually and together. But the truth is that I was trying to escape my house as much as possible. And at the same time, every time I traveled to PR, like I said, the years went by and I tried to lose my accent when I lived in Jersey just because I was getting made fun of for having an accent over there. And then I would come to Puerto Rico and then I would get made fun of for, no longer being from the island. So
hmm
it was like this never fitting in energy,
Yeah.
which now I really appreciate because it helps me become a bridge for my community. But at that time, it was just frustrating, and there was a little bit of resent for just like everywhere I was at, and that kind of repeated itself in high school. So in high school, I remember I got accepted into like we call them magnet schools. They're like you get accepted, and it's like higher education, like kind of like AP classes and all of that stuff.
hmm
And that was like a community high school. So I remember, being from Elizabeth, Roselle, New Jersey, kind of like closer to Newark, right?
Yeah, for
Um,
those people that don't know, that's kind of a rougher part of New Jersey.
yeah, exactly. So, mostly black and brown kids, Latino kids that I would hang out with. My best friends were Colombian and black. Um, And I remember going to high school and feeling the same way because all the other New Jersey is very diverse. So then all the other towns that would come in, I was one of three, I guess boys of color in high school.
Hmm.
And that was again, like I was that Kanye West at that time was one of my favorite artists because it was kind of like polos and backpack energy at school. And it was too much for, the kids at school, too much to not hood enough for the kids in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
So, it was just very interesting how it just continued to be this in between worlds energy for me. Um,
I can totally relate to that, brother. I was born in Russia, and then I would go back in the summers to be with my grandparents, and life was a little chaotic with my parents. So, yeah, I never felt like I really fit in America because I was a Russian kid out here, and then over there I was like the American kid, you know? So, yeah, it's a really it's an interesting place to be at that time because you're
right.
figuring yourself out. I was figuring myself out, you know, I was trying to figure out where I fit in, what who to hang out with. Like there wasn't many other Russian kids at school, so I can totally relate. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a common thing, and also it feels very uncommon when you're in the midst of it, right?
for
You're like,
sure. Yeah.
so I mean that was the case, and then I think the roughest part of my childhood was really between the ages of 11 and 15.
Hmm.
My parents were in there was just a lot of chaos at home. My mom had a lot of anxiety, my father a lot of resentment, and I just became a parentified child. Like I honestly became my father's therapist. He would vent, with me outside of the arguments, and then my mom. It was just like I became a very empathetic, attuned child because I was paying attention to how she would drop the keys to figure out like what kind of situation I was getting into that day.
Mm.
And then that drew me to psychology. I always wanted to be a doctor when I was a kid. It was like I was always teaching, I was always like helping, I was always like when I grow up, I want to buy a house for my entire family and I want to be a doctor so I can help everyone heal and all this stuff. But then I went psychology because it was like how the fuck do I figure out like not to repeat these patterns? How do I help my parents? How do I fix my parents? Which was, you can't fix anybody, right? So it was
Right.
very interesting. I went in with that mindset and it was strategy.
Hmm.
So I think a lot of my early 20s was just rooted in strategy.
Hmm.
And just to kind of get to the point, land the plane on what really ended up being the catalyst for my journey that led me here, to the work that I do today, is after my bachelor's in psychology, it took me about 4 years to go to a therapist.
Mm.
So it's like I believed in therapy. I understood what it was for. I understood the mind. I had all the language, right? But I still had the feeling of like if I'm not broken, then I don't got to go to therapy. But there was a lot of blind spots. There were a lot of ways I was sabotaging my relationship. There were a lot of ways, excuse me, that I was still parentifying, parenting my parents between their divorce after I moved out. And then I had a major breakdown in my relationship. And that kind of unraveled and sh revealed to me ways that my job was just not aligned, that my health was not aligned. I had an autoimmune disease I was ignoring and still drinking, eating like shit.
Mm.
So it's just like it all came down to this moment where I was already starting to work on myself, but I was doing it on a very surface level. And then boom, like person I love almost, we chose to possibly separate. And that took me down the rabbit hole of men's work and of embodiment and of therapy. And that was 9 years ago. So, and obviously I'm still a work in progress and there's still so much that comes up and I get to give myself grace and compassion for. But that was like really the journey leading up to like growth and evolution being one of my values that is non-negotiable and committing to taking responsibility for my life.
I love that. I love that. So, which men's group did you start with? Did you go to the Mankind Project, or how?
So I
What did you
did
find first?
I read No More Mr. Nice Guy by Robert Glover,
Mm-hmm.
and I found No More Mr. Nice Guy men's group in New York
Mm.
City. So I was hitting that up for about 6 months. And then I was really attuned to um I forgot his name, but he was one of the co-founders of Everyman, Owen
Okay.
Marcus. So he wrote
Okay.
a book, and that's actually the first time I heard about men's groups. I listened to a podcast, and in the podcast, he's talked about masculine emotional intelligence.
Mm.
And then after that, he spoke about one of the pillars or things that helped him develop emotional intelligence the most. And he said men's groups.
Mhm.
And at first, the first thought I had about it was, one of my favorite movies is Fight Club.
Yeah,
So I
me
just
too.
remember in Fight Club where he's hopping from a meeting to, Alcoholics Anonymous, Addicts Anonymous, fucking Sex
Yeah,
Anonymous, like,
yeah, 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 yeah.
and I'm like, all right, so I guess you sit in a circle and you just fucking share about your problems. But I
Bro,
got really
just to
curious and
just
yeah,
just to add on that, when I watched Fight Club, I was like, I want this. I want this in the future. Whatever they're doing, I don't want it exactly like what they're doing, but I want to
yeah,
experience that type of brotherhood. I want to experience that type of community where the men are all supporting each other.
right,
You know, they were doing it in a different way, obviously,
right,
but I was like, man, there's something real to this, you know? And
yeah.
I was when I found men's work with the Sacred Sons, I was like, that's it. That's what I was trying to do. And then I think I met you. You hit me up on Instagram when we were just kind of starting the Brothers of Light.
Yeah.
So it was just like so interesting how we I think we just launched the Instagram for the Brothers of Light, and we were just kind of starting things going, and then you just popped in, and I was like, yo, I like this guy. I want to do more stuff with him. So that was really
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
And that might have been 2020. I know 2020, everything was going digital, because
Yeah.
there was no choice with quarantine. I was trying to connect with as many guys in the space as possible, and I remember, yeah, man, not to go too deep into it, but we had a men's event in 2019, December of 2019. We had like 90 men, and we're really starting to pick up the events. I mean, the event was just so exciting, and it was such a like, you know, um, an inspiration for what was to come. And then
Hmm.
that March after, we had filled up the retreat after that event. We had like a 15-man retreat upstate New York. And I remember that weekend we came out of the retreat and quarantine, like New York City, it was like kicked off. And we had to go online, like it was I think it really created a shift because more people got to see. I don't know if you feel this way, but I think with the quarantine in general, um, I think more people started talking about emotional intelligence, talking about mental health and the impacts of being indoors and not being connected in community. And I think that then led to more people being part of men's groups, and then that led to, I think, a lot of men's coaches and men's groups, besides the ones that, are already pretty established before then, are from guys that really dove in deep from like 2020 to the last couple of years.
For
And
sure.
yeah, man, I'm really happy for how many men are diving into men's work since the time that you and I connected, because there's a lot
Yeah.
more men's groups out
Oh
now doing
yeah.
their thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's such important work. It's such important work, and there's definitely a power in doing it online, and there's even for me it's even more powerful to be in person because then
Mhm.
you can like support men in other ways that you can't online.
Right.
There's different techniques, different uh, you know ways where you can release charges, like when somebody's either activated or having a golden charge. Those can be released. That's harder to do online, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Even as simple as like feeling the energy of another man when you're like sharing, right?
Yeah.
There's a co-regulation that's happening.
Hmm.
Like one of the most simple things that really like shifted so much for me was doing a daily check-in. Where's my mind? Where's my body? Where's my heart? What am I feeling? What am I thinking? And I know like even there's a difference. We always check in whether online or in person, but there's a difference. Like, I've felt a difference and I've witnessed a difference. And when men check in on how they feel and they feel the presence of other men, just um, not just seeing them as they speak, but also feeling and noticing maybe in their body and in their expression, the correlated thing that they just described. Like there's just so many layers to being in person. I agree, man. That just allows you, and that's what allowed me to learn more about embodiment. I mean, going to men's groups in person and then getting invited to a retreat, and then
Hmm.
at the retreat experiencing somatic release, or experiencing a hand on my back, or experiencing a hug, or experiencing breath work, experiencing different things that oftentimes online limits the ability to experience.
Yeah, growing up, it makes me think about growing up. It was like you don't hug your boys. You don't have any physical contact. You might do a little dab here and just kind of, yo, what's up? But it's not like heart to heart. I never
Right,
really felt that connection, and I was always a more intuitive guy, just like in middle school and stuff, people would be like, "Are you into guys?" And I'm like, "No, I've always been into women." I'm like, "Yo, what do you mean?" I couldn't understand why people felt that way about me, and it was only until later on in my life where I was like, I'm just more intuitive, I'm more tapped in. I remember one of my friends being like, "You're either street smart or you're book smart." And I was like, "Bro, I'm both." Because I can feel what you're saying. I have the street smarts. I can sense my environment, right? I can sense when there's danger or whatever. And I can also do well in school and I can understand the stuff that's in the books, and I realize that not everybody has that. Not every man, not every woman has that, and it's a gift. Later
yeah,
on I realized it was a gift. And it also made me think while you were sharing, it made me think about how, the first couple of times I showed up to men's groups, there would be like one or two guys. I would never have met him, right? But I would feel something. I'd be like, "Yo, who is this guy? Why is he like staring at me? Why is he acting that way?" And like, and it was really interesting because it's always something inside myself, right?
right,
And it was like, okay, I need to figure this out. And men's work really helped me like dive into that and realize that that guy that I'm feeling something from maybe going through something, or he may be like trying to put on a mask or try to be tougher than he, like put on that tough kind of, and I'm whatever, right? And
yeah,
and and it just made me realize like I really enjoy being around guys that are real, like
right,
that are authentic, that aren't putting on masks, that aren't trying to be something that they're not, and now I surround myself with men like that call me forward, that really are there to that really care basically, about what is happening in my life. I care about what's happening in their life, and we're there to like genuinely support each other. And I don't, I've had, in college and high school, I had a couple of close boys, but I believe that in this, with that type of level of awareness, the depth of the friendships and the connections and like being able to have those difficult conversation, being like, "Yo, how are you talking to your son?" Or like, "How are you, like that's not in alignment," and those kind of conversations most people would be afraid to have with their friends because they may be like, yo, who are you to tell me? But in that space, that's invited and that's appreciated, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It reminds me of I love that share, and it reminds me of um one of my mentors said vulnerability over time equals depth of connection, right? And to
Yeah.
me, it's to put vulnerability into an equation sounds bizarre, but to me, it makes complete sense. It's like, the more vulnerability there is, the less time is needed for more depth of connection, right?
Hmm.
Because and the less vulnerability there is, usually the more time is required in order to feel connected to somebody. But even then, like I've known guys for a while, that and not blaming it on them. I'll take responsibility as well. Like guys for a while that we just keep it at the same level of vulnerability. We don't go that deep.
Hmm.
And even after a long time, the relationship doesn't actually, there's no deeper connection that's created. And then guys that, this, you go into a men's group or a men's weekend, and sometimes like you connect with guys, and just the depth that you go to the level of depth that you reach during that weekend, these guys become like friends for life. I mean, you feel like you've
Yeah.
known them for fucking years because
Yeah.
there's just so much that's revealed, so much that was held, so much that was witnessed, so much trust that was built in just removing the mask and, like you said, keeping it real. And it's fucking scary, man. I still have trouble being vulnerable.
Hmm.
I still got to remind myself, like, whenever I'm going through an initiatory period and whenever I'm doing really well, like, I need to remind myself, bro, reach out to these guys and check in, ask them how
Hmm.
they're doing. Because
Hmm.
otherwise, for me, it is a practice skill because otherwise my default is to isolate
Hmm.
and try to figure it out on my own, try to endure, try to like power through.
Yeah.
And it's never healthy, and it's never um as powerful as sharing it with other men.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, those kind of retreats and those kind of gatherings where there's men with intention coming there to be better, to heal, to release, right? Like I remember one of the more powerful weekends was when I came to your retreat in New Jersey with
Mm,
Voy, and I remember you guys put up the big punching bag, right? Like, and you're like, just let it out as hard as you can, and I just went for it, bro, and I just and like I felt you feel it, like
yeah,
there was like this bomb that blew up as I hit it,
yeah.
and I was just like, wow, something big just released, and like there's so many men that hold so much anger inside, right? And there's not that many spaces to release that in a healthy way, you
Right,
know? And so, out here in Vegas, we intentionally go into that space and try to activate something in the men so that can come out so it's not coming out in unhealthy ways throughout their life with their partners, with their family, with whoever, right? And yeah, that was really powerful. And then there was, a weekend that we threw, the Brothers of Light weekend, where, we had 12 different facilitators from sound baths to cacao to hape ceremony to I think we might have I don't think we did combo that weekend, but we did sweat lodge and just like feeling that depth of like, okay, let's go a little deeper, let's go a little deeper, and just like breaking down those walls of like what's quote unquote for women and what's for men, right? Because all of it, all the tools that are out there are available for both, and they're just as
hmm
powerful for men when they really lean into it and let go of those like, oh, all these beliefs around it, right?
right. Yeah, yeah. I mean, we're human, We've
Yeah.
we've we've got an emotional body, a mental body, a physical body. There's so many different bodies, and they're different, but they all benefit from, you know, um, processing of emotion, feeling
Mhm.
emotion. Like we become so stunted. It's like we don't if you write with your right hand and not your left, you'll have a tough time writing with your left, but your left and your left won't be as strong, but your left is still used for so many things. So
Yeah.
you have dexterity. It's not like it's not gonna fall off. But if you literally think about like the left hand as we talk about masculinity. So often we talk about masculinity being man and feminine energy being woman. And then we forget to cultivate and really nourish the parts within us that are the opposite, right? Like
Mhm.
thoughts, feelings, emotions are all the feminine, right?
Right.
And if we don't have respect for the feminine outside of ourselves or feel like we're only supposed to be masculine, that means we don't have respect for the feminine within ourselves. And then what ends up happening is, we lose a part of ourselves, like a left hand that's never used, and we're incomplete. Like,
Yeah.
it's just we end up navigating life without being able to meet a moment because the moment doesn't require strength, uh, direction, discipline, and then we don't know what to do, right?
Right.
Like sometimes the moment requires us to bring some empathy. Sometimes the moment requires us to bring some joy. Like joy is vulnerability, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So often that's the other piece, with men's groups is, and I don't think all men's groups are built the same, but one thing I'm really an advocate for, especially in our containers, is really teaching and letting men feel um, the full gamut of emotions fully, which includes happiness, which includes excitement, which includes joy. I can't tell you how many times I was afraid of expressing those emotions out of fear of like, if I'm happy or joyful, that means that I'm settling, or that
Hmm.
means I'm going to lose my grit, or that means that
Hmm.
I'm going to um, look like to my coworkers like I'm not working hard enough and I'm not joining them in the misery contest when I was in corporate. So it's
Hmm.
really interesting, just like how often men I don't think because they want to. Oftentimes, we don't know how to feel our emotions or express them in a healthy way without fear of hurting someone, or we just don't know it's even possible, right? Or we
Yeah.
don't think that it's possible to do so in society without getting ridiculed or without losing our status or without losing respect or without fill in the blank with all the shit that we oftentimes think we're going to lose if we feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
John Wineland has been a huge proponent of this, and I know you've done some work with him recently and over the years, and I haven't met him in person yet, but I just really appreciate the way that he portrays that it's okay for men to feel, and he actually emphasizes that and shares that he has this emotional body as a man,
Yeah.
and he really that's how he navigates,
Yeah.
and he's one of those people that kind of made it gave the education for other men to be like, oh, okay, now it kind of clicked in for me where I was like, okay, that's why those guys in middle school were like, yo, are you gay? Are you into guys? And I'm like,
Yeah.
and so it all clicked in that moment where it was like, okay, we're actually some men navigate from their emotions and they're more intuitive and they're just more tapped into that feminine side, and a lot of men aren't, and so it's important to bring that back online and to become that full picture of the yin yang inside each
Yeah.
one of us, because like you said, it changes the way we relate with the feminine, with the women in our life.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, John is one of my primary teachers. Actually I'm in his teacher training right now, year two of teacher training, and I had a one-on-one call with him last week. And the reason why I really respect him as a teacher, not to make this convo about him, but it's because a lot of in the polarity space, a lot of the teachers kind of focus on masculine embodiment, masculine embodiment, masculine embodiment. And ironically, he's one of the I don't say pioneers, but he's one of the core students of David Data, which everybody on social media who's talking about masculine, feminine polarity is regurgitating a lot of his work. He kind of brings in that human aspect, and you just touched on that of just like um, we need to cultivate all these parts of ourselves so that we can then decide what our core expression, what expression feels most aligned for us. And like you said, we all have an emotional body. Some guys have a masculine emotional body, some guys have a feminine emotional body leaning, which doesn't mean that you don't have masculine or feminine if that's where you lean towards, but you kind of lean towards it. And that could be just based on, nurture, it could be how you were born and the way you expressed. But ultimately, like nobody can tell you how to be a man. Hence
Yeah.
why for me, men's work is so important because you're surrounding yourself with so many different men and you are getting different ideas of what it's like to be a man. Like I've learned how to be more loving from certain men that I've surrounded myself with, and I've learned how to be more disciplined
Yeah.
from certain men.
Hmm.
I've learned how to be more nurturing, more strategic, more focused, more like really owning direction, really owning flow and flexibility from different men. And I've gotten to feel it, try it out, and then decide, all right, this is what I want to express myself from day to day. This is what I want to express during sex. This is what I want to express in this moment. This is what the moment needs. It's just so important to like just surround yourself um, with different men and I will say this. I think a lot of men's work for some time. Somebody asked me the other day, what do you think is the difference between men's work today and men's work during that first, like not first phase, but the recent phase, the most recent phase before this one, which I would say is like the 90s, 80s, Robert Glover, but also Robert Bly, right? Iron John, author, Michael Mead, those guys. And I was thinking, I think even Mankind Project is some incredible work, but I think they've evolved. But I think a lot of the men's work during that time where there was very active feminist movement, it was all about feeling the emotions and a lot of what we just spoke about, which a lot of men are stunted in and they get to really lean into so they can be a comprehensive man like Jason Wilson says or a integrated man. But I think today we're kind of figuring out ways to integrate both, at least in the men's spaces that I'm a part of. I think there's a
Yeah.
lot of spaces that kind of lean a lot towards one side or the other. But for me, it's like, how do you create a container where that masculine embodiment is really cultivated, where you learn how to cultivate more awareness, you learn how to cultivate more grounded presence, you learn how to breathe more deeply, you learn how to be more direct, you learn discipline, and men hold you accountable with loving, like, lovingly calling you forward, and then also have the container available, which in my opinion, the more masculine, like grounded, integrated masculine energy there is, safety, container, structure, the more we could be in our feminine,
Hmm.
right? So then that is also the space, becomes a space for us to kind of dive into the emotions and all of that. So for me, it's like all of it is necessary, and then a man gets to decide what feels most aligned and how he feels like his gift to the world looks like.
Yeah, for sure, bro. I went through that whole same process that you were mentioning where I knew from a young age that I didn't want to be like my dad in a lot of regards, right? Where he was too explosive, too reactive, too angry, like I was like, this is not how I want to show up. And diving into the men's workspace, and into all the different teachers that I had that were men, I took a little piece of this, a little piece of that, a little piece here, a little piece there, kind of like what you mentioned, where it was like I shaped what my version of masculinity wanted to look like. And I learned how to bring in that structure without that anger piece, without that reactivity. I learned the difference between like a toxic explosive masculine versus a embodied masculine, where it's like, okay, I'm here, I'm holding the experience. I'm just a lot of times people just want to be heard and seen, and just asking those questions to my partner, right? Like being like, hey, what do you need right now? Or, maybe just listening, right? Like a lot of times the feminine just wants to be heard and witnessed. And so, just learning those other sides that are much more healthy than the way that I saw growing up, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, that was really powerful. And I think this is a great bridge to talk about how important it is for young men to have these initiations and rites of passage because, you know, at least for me, there was nothing like that around when I was a
Right.
teenager, when I was growing up. At least not that I knew of or had access to, and I think that it's really powerful what you guys are doing with the wilderness embodiment, right? And going into it, and it seems like you guys have taken aspects of Vision Quest,
Yeah.
right? Which is what Native American traditions follow, and kind of created your own version of that,
Hmm.
where yeah, maybe you can speak a little more into that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I love that you brought this up, man. Initiations is one of my favorite topics, not just in the realm of rites of passage, but just in the realm of like a man becoming initiating into a new evolution of his vision, of his life, of his leadership. To me, initiation is really being like inducted into something, right? And not just we think initiating into a gang or initiating into going through boot camp and initiating into, being part of the military or fraternity, et cetera. But I think initiation, you know, it can be bastardized in those contexts, but really initiation means that you went through something that gives you the tools, the skills, and the capacity, the conviction, the clarity that you need in order to take care of business on the other side, whatever business means to you, right? And I think you mentioned youth. We all come from ancestors that practice nature-based coming of age rituals. You look far back enough, they all practice it. Some of them were a little bit more intense than others, and I
Yeah,
would
for sure.
say aren't fit for today's society and lifestyle and leadership. But the truth is that they had a purpose. I mean, if you really think about it, life was more brutal back then too. So if you think like, okay, maybe this is what they did in some Amazon tribes. Well, if you didn't prepare through that, then at that time maybe it was a high chance that you would die from a snake bite,
Hmm.
or you'd be too irresponsible to take care of your community, instead take care of yourself and not hunt for the community, or not know how to protect your family. So I think it was proportionate to the experience, and also I don't know every single initiation and what that looked like, but the truth is that leadership has evolved, community has evolved. In my opinion, studies show this, we are still primal when it comes to how our unconscious and our instincts kind of run the show the majority of the time. And the truth is that um, we often live our lives running away from death or ignoring it as a possibility. And I think initiation and rites of passage is really rather, they help you confront the things that are keeping you from really living your purpose, without you needing to wait for life to hand it to you. Like so many people, I mean, being in men's work, but also as a coach, I see this all the time. It's just like men don't like their job, but they wait to be fired to change it.
Mm,
Men don't like the way their relationship look, but they wait to be broken up with to change it.
mm,
Men feel unhappy with their health, and they wait for something to break down to change it. It's like driving. If you drunk drive often, you'll get into an accident, and that accident, it could be a life-changing moment, or it could be a moment that you like, fuck it, at least I survived. Let's keep doing what we were doing. And
hmm
initiatory rites of passages are all about creating the conditions for clarity, the conditions for you to meet your strengths and your weaknesses and humble yourself. And
hmm
I made a post about this yesterday, that we talk a lot about empowering ourselves in the personal development space, but we forget that there's no growth without grief. And initiation
Absolutely.
is really about humbling ourselves before we can't really own our power if we don't own and face off with our weaknesses. And nature has a beautiful way of doing that. We've taken out Marines, we've taken out military guys, taken out serial entrepreneurs, guys who go on hikes for days, and all of them meet some sort of fear or confront some sort of thing that's keeping blind spot that's keeping them from stepping into the next stage of their life. And that's what we do, man. I have the honor just to drop some legacy. Two of my teachers are sun dancers. And my other teacher just comes from a lineage of rites of passage that really bridges together psychology, shadow work, Jungian psychology, all of those elements with really just the traditional pieces of wilderness initiations. And then what one of the guys that I did the apprenticeship with and is a close friend, um, he kind of weaved in the men's work aspect, right?
Hmm.
So I think Mankind Project does something similar with men's work involved. So what we do is we bridge men's work, leadership coaching and training with just the ancestral teachings of a rite of passage. And it's not to say that you need to do something like this in order to become a man, because I'm big on also calling forward when guys are like, you need to do this to become a man or become the man that I tell you to be. There's a lot of that.
Hmm.
I think initiation is necessary. And there's a lot of ways you can step into an initiatory process. And one way we do it is taking guys out for 8 days. And 4 of those days they fast, no food, no shelter, and no company, so they can be with themselves in nature and really figure out what needs to be severed and what needs to be embodied to serve their community and their lives.
Absolutely. I think it's a really powerful initiation, that one in particular. I've This is my third year doing Vision Quest, and with Vision Quest, you don't do any food or water,
Right.
and you go into a sweat lodge, and then you get released out in nature, and you just have to sit in it. You just got to sit
Yeah.
and just be with yourself, right? And for a lot of people, men and women, being being by themselves in itself is an initiation, right?
Right.
In today's society, everybody tries to distract, tries to numb, tries to do anything they can from looking at themselves and sitting with themselves, right? And then
Facts.
on top of that, you add all these wild animals, all the spirits, all the aspects that I had no idea about going out there the
Right.
first time, you
Right.
know, and the
It's
ways that I
crazy.
was challenged, the fears that came up, I could have never predicted. And each year is different. Each year is different. And it's like, it's like an onion. It's like, okay, I took care of that layer. Now we got another layer, another layer. So for me, it's been these layers of like shedding and realizing how supported I am and how, uh, the fear doesn't need to be there because I can feel it and then I can tap into a higher frequency of love. And in that frequency, those things don't exist. Like the animals do, obviously, but the darker spirits and things like that, that's all based on frequency. So in
Right.
that frequency, it doesn't exist. So that was my big realization this year was I stayed in my heart space through the whole experience, and I was able to also see my limitations, right? Like
Right.
how much food do I really need? How much water do I really need? What is my capacity as a man, as a human, right? Like
Right.
what am I capable of? And there's so much strength and power in that. Another initiation that was really powerful for me was the first time I did combo,
I
right? And
bet. I
you've
bet.
sat
That's what I'm scared about a little bit.
have you sat with it yet?
I haven't, and I know that that would be an initiation for sure, but curious to hear what your first experience is like.
So I really wanted to tap into that my own inner power and my inner warrior. And traditionally, for those that don't know, combo is a frog poison. Comes from the combo frog from the Amazon. And what they do is they take a little stick and they burn the top of your skin off like two seconds with a hot stick, and then it opens up your lymphatic system. And traditionally, for men, they do the left arm, so it's right by your heart, and they do usually 3 points, so three of those sticks, and it's a tiny little point, and then they put the frog poison on there, the frog secretion, which is received as poison for us, but there's also huge benefits to the body. There's a purging effect as well as the body starts to really heat up. You get super hot, and it gets really intense. But then for me, it was tapping into that warrior and also like seeing how much of it was related to emotions and to the things that I was holding. And I've done it like 5 or 6 times now. And there's been times when I was going through a breakup, right? And I would have all this low back pain. And mentally, logically, there's no connection between low back pain and a breakup, right? But as I purged and released all this energy from my physical body and my energetic bodies, I realized that I was holding all that tension and all that pain from the breakup in my lower back. And when I released it, there wasn't, it released all that as well. So there's
Wow.
many layers to it, right? And
Yeah.
and so it's
That's
not
definitely an
just,
initiation.
yeah, it's not just a physical cleanse, but there's many layers to it. So and it crosses the blood-brain barrier, so it releases and clears out all the toxins, microplastics, all that in your body, and it's a powerful medicine. So I had some, yeah, like following it, I had some health stuff that sometimes would arise that was just clearing out all this toxicity in my body, and it's just different every time depending on what you're holding, what you're ready to let go of, and what you're trying to step into, like you said, into the next chapter.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man, and really honoring you for finding medicine that really helped to clear some of that energy. Sounds like a lot. It clears a lot of psychosomatic stuff
Yeah.
that comes from, wounds, trauma, PTSD experiences that create grief and sometimes go lodged in the body. I mean, they're all initiations. One initiation for me is like sometimes when I'm grieving something, setting like a 30, 40-day sadhana where I'm doing the same practice every day, and it's a grief practice where I just
Hmm.
allow myself to grieve, and anything that's out of the ordinary that you give an intention to and lean into is a form of initiation. Like even a conversation where you're learning something new is an initiation because there's a part of you that believed something else or thought something else or understood something a certain way that's dying, right? And
Yeah.
and that itself is an initiation. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I
man.
really like that, instead of looking at it as like a depression or anxiety or whatever you're feeling in your body, looking at it as an initiation and like, okay, this is going to take me to the next level. It's going to release some old beliefs. It's going to release some part of me that no longer is serving my highest timeline and my highest aspect.
100%. Yeah, man. I mean, the more something for example, the more our heart breaks, the bigger our heart gets, it gets the capacity for love becomes greater, right? So sometimes we need to allow ourselves to be in that process to allow more love to come in.
Yeah, yeah, for sure,
Yeah.
brother. Well, we're right at time now. So, thank you so much for coming on, brother. It's been such an honor to have you on. I feel like we have a lot more we could cover. We could do a part two, and you're always welcome back on the podcast, brother. It's been a pleasure, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, bro. Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed the convo and just the topics we dove into, and I'm excited. I'm excited to hear it once it's set and ready.
For sure, brother. Until next time, man. Thank you.